Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lynne Brown. I'm Senior Vice President at New York University and here to welcome and greet you and offer a warm welcome on this chilly morning. A very impressive turnout, and what a gathering this is. So impressive in your diversity, yet united in your goal to increase awareness, engagement, and action around the role of our food system in climate problems and solutions. So we have with us today environmentalists, nutritionists, educators, community gardeners, food experts, educators, urban farmers, advocates, activists, civic leaders, elected officials, concerned citizens all. And New York University is proud and pleased to welcome you here to the Skirball Theater. We think it's appropriate to have this day-long event on a college campus. For one thing, what you are doing today is hard intellectual work. It's not for the faint-hearted. You will be dealing with the nexus of policy issues involving health, environment, food safety, personal health, and the economy. And what better place to put your minds to that kind of hard thinking than on a college campus? If I had the authority vested in me, I'm sure I could throw a few college credits or work toward your master's or PhD. We'll see how the day goes, and I'll come back later. A second reason is NYU itself has made great strides in this area, but we still have a lot to do. And being the forum for a day like this both validates what we have done so far, but motivates us to do better. We have made sustainability a key part of our mission as a university. We are trying to make real that commitment in everything from our buildings to our energy systems to our recycling program. We do have the largest composting program in Manhattan, footnote. And we have with us today many of our campus leaders. And so your decision to come here today, as I say, is a great imprimatur for us in what we're doing. And a final reason I think it's important to note your location here and its relevance is that Greenwich Village in this neighborhood has long been a place where creative and bold people assemble to do important things. From days in the early 20th century when writers and painters and the creative class of Greenwich Village clambered their way up to Washington Square Arch and decreed that Greenwich Village would secede from the United States and instead create a kingdom of the mind and heart and imagination. You follow now, a century later, in that tradition as you take on your New York City Food Pledge Charter. So think of yourselves following in those footsteps. In closing, let me just say a word about the convener of this summit. He's one of the most thoughtful, effective, talented civic leaders. I speak, of course, of Scott Stringer, Borough President of Manhattan. We are very lucky as Manhattanites to have him as our leader, but we are very lucky as New Yorkers to have him reshaping the landscape of New York through very important initiatives, from education to land use to this very important summit. And so I want to thank Scott for his leadership in bringing all of us together. And of course, his gloriously talented deputy, Rose Pierre-Louis, whose hand has been behind this in every way. Scott and Rosalie. And so, as they say, without further ado, and everyone's now settled, which is really my role, is to allow everyone to get settled, comfortable, pay attention, cell phones off, minds on. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce one of the co-sponsors and real spark plugs for this summit, Jacquie Berger, the Executive Director of Just Food.
Wow. Good morning, everyone. Sorry. It's incredible to stand here in front of this tremendous crowd this morning. It's truly overwhelming, and I'd like to start by thanking our incredible host, NYU, Lynne, Regina, Jeremy, Greg, Jacquie, and Amaha. You have jumped through logistical hoops. Thank you so much for generously supporting all the needs and quirks that this conference entailed. I'd like to thank Manhattan Borough President Scott Stringer and his team, Jenny, Rose, Kate, and everyone else. Thank you so much for being incredible partners and for everything you have done to bring us to this day. I'd like to thank our planning committee, 30+ organizations who so generously contributed to this summit by making it their own. Thank you so much for everything you've done to bring these offerings together. I'd like to thank our sponsors. You'll see them listed here in a moment, but they gave very generously to today's program and especially to making this morning's plenary possible. I'd like to thank the Just Food staff, Nadia Johnson in particular, our food justice coordinator and tireless leader. Most importantly, I'd like to thank you, the 1,000 people who have gathered here this morning. I want to take a moment to express our gratitude and to acknowledge who is in this room together right now, from the students who are delving into these issues for the very first time in their coursework here at NYU, to the advocates, urban and regional farmers, scholars, chefs, community organizers, journalists, elected officials, and agency representatives, those of you who have been tackling these issues and championing this work for decades. We come together today to join in a movement based on the foundation that you have built. Today, we stand on the shoulders of giants. We are grateful to those of you who have been advocating for organic and sustainable agricultural practices, for regional food and energy sovereignty, for urban agriculture, for green infrastructure, for community health, and for a food system which embodies ecological responsibility and justice. Your calls have brought us to this moment, but even so, your voices have been in large part overlooked or unheard until now. Now it seems the ground is beginning to shift. Given Just Food's 15 years of experience in CSA organizing, urban agriculture training, food educating, and conference organizing, and this is our 9th major summit in New York City, we're in a unique position to bear witness to this shift. Our mission is to increase access to fresh food for all New Yorkers and to support the local farmers and urban gardeners that make it available to us. And demand for our work has grown. And I have a simple statistic that I think really illustrates this point. So in 2007, there were 50 CSAs in New York City, and that was amazing. And that's at the culmination of 12 years of Just Food's work in this field. And by this spring, we anticipate that the number of CSAs in New York City will have doubled from that point, that more than 50 new CSAs will have sprung up in New York City in those 3 short intervening years. That is what we mean when we say we are witnessing a sea change in New York City. And that's what makes this truly an exciting and exhilarating moment for us. We're finally beginning to see interest and attention being paid not just by farmers, nutritionists, advocates, and academics, but by the leaders in government, by offices of power. We're thrilled by the commitment and attention that Manhattan Borough President Scott Stringer and his team have been dedicating to food system reform, and we are proud to be among the first signatories of the New York Food Charter and Pledge. We're also encouraged by the announcement this week that the City Council is embarking on a FoodWorks initiative, which will soon be unveiled and invoked to measure and improve the performance of our city's food system and infrastructure. But there is still so much work to be done. And even though our leaders, some of them at least, are waking up not only to the impending global warming disaster that we face, but to the connections between global warming and food systems, many important change makers are notably absent from this room today. But this work is too important for them not to hear our voices. The implications, not just for our ecological footprint, but for our city's economy, health, and well-being are too systemic to be ignored. This is a tremendous opportunity, and simultaneously, it presents us with a tremendous challenge. That is why I am heartened when I think of who is in this room today, who we have the opportunity to work together with to meet this challenge. Today, we have a lot to learn and a lot to do. And if you're here to learn new skills, you can take part in a workshop that will help you make changes in your own home and in your neighborhood to live and eat more sustainably. If you're here to participate in a policy session, you will be participating in a new model, a session designed by expert facilitators from Just Food, Heifer International, the Food Project, World Hunger Year, and the Manhattan Borough President's Office to facilitate dialogue in order to produce a platform for action that will help guide and shape our campaigns and policy agenda in 2010 and beyond. Regardless of where you go today, our actions and our efforts will add up, but even that is not enough. You're in this room because you already get it. You're already a part of the movement. In the weeks and months to come, we want to support your enthusiasm and help you reach out, recruit 10 new friends. This summit is the beginning of a journey, and it will call attention and build political will around the issue that clearly, as you have shown today, New Yorkers know is important. So when you leave this summit today, we hope you will feel that you are the part of the beginning of something. We hope to build a partnership with you so that we can work together to make sure that the issues we target today and the initiatives we discuss grow legs, run forward, and really start to shape the policies that guide the food politics in this city and beyond. Our timing is just right. So let's chart this course together to ensure that as champions of this movement, we in this room will continue to define not just what is, but what can be. And let's move forward together to create the just, equitable, and sustainable food system that we all believe is possible. And now, the man who is putting food policy on the front burner in this city, who through his Go Green East Harlem Health Initiative brought us the great Go Green East Harlem cookbook, and who last fall went where no New York City political leader had gone before with the Politics of Food conference. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce Manhattan Borough President Scott Stringer.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jacquie Berger, for those kind words. And let's face it, Just Food has become an organization that has made food advocacy, and the whole notion of why we're here today is because of this amazing organization. Jacquie Berger, Nadia Johnson, they are leaders in this movement. Give them a very big round of applause, very big. And I want to thank Lynne Brown and President John Sexton and the entire NYU team. They've done more than host us today. They've been partners in providing vision for this summit, and thank you, Regina Drew, for your leadership. Give them a round of applause, please. And I want to thank the Deputy Borough President, who's really my Vice President, Rose Pierre-Louis, and Jenny Clapp, our Deputy Director of Policy. They've done an amazing job as well. And you know, the fact is, we're here because reforming food policy and building a sustainable food system takes on one of the most basic decisions we make as human beings, and that is choosing what to eat. And think about how often your parent or parent gets asked, what should we have for dinner? And there is perhaps no question that is most familiar, but the reality is it's very complicated. For most families, putting healthy food on the table every night is a big enough chore. Going beyond that and making sure that our food choices support the environment and local economy and advance social justice is even harder. That, in a nutshell, is what we're dealing with today. Food policy will remain the top priority for my office in the years ahead. It must, because New York City cannot reach its potential until we get this right. I want to talk to you about the guideposts we must follow if we are to remake our food system. First, New York City must be front and center in the international debate over food. Today in Copenhagen, a discussion among world leaders on global warming is nearing its conclusion. There remain many unknowns, but this much is certain. Food policy will not be given its due at the UN summit. New York City has provided leadership to the world many times before, and on this issue, we must lead again. The fact that Mayor Bloomberg's environmental blueprint, Plan NYC 2030, failed to mention food was an omission in a document that otherwise deserves great praise. Here's one way we can start to correct that oversight. Everyone here today needs to sign the pledge in support of our New York City Sustainable Food Charter. The Charter's 10 principles point the way toward a new chapter for Plan NYC, a chapter on building a sustainable food system. This charter is a powerful document drafted with the help of our steering committee and a very hardworking subcommittee. I believe they have created a new Bill of Rights for food. Sign that pledge today, please. Another key to reform is that cities must embrace their leadership role in the food revolution. For a very long time, the U.S. Congress has gotten this exactly wrong, ceding too much authority to rule states on foreign policy and nutritional guidelines. Well, guess what? For the first time in history, half the world's population, over 3 billion people, are living in cities where the consumers and our neighborhoods are the place where rates of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease are off the charts. It's a real tragedy unfolding for our New York City kids. We must have our say, and I hope you agree. A third goal for us today is to reframe the food policy debate. Too many policymakers still approach this issue with blinders on, refusing to see that smart food policy will help us deal with other major problems in our country. Think about this. A recent study found that by 2018, just 8 years from now, the U.S. will be spending $344 billion on health care costs connected to obesity. That will amount to 20% of all health care spending. The single best answer to childhood obesity, according to researchers from Columbia and MIT, is to develop a regional food system that improves diet and nutrition. And of course, food policy must also be at the center of climate change discussion. 1/3 of the world's global warming is estimated to come from the production, processing, distribution, and disposal of food. Smart and strategic food policy is no longer a luxury. In 2009, it's a necessity. And the final guidepost for our work today is to value the role of community input in shaping policy. We all applaud President Obama for talking about building the green-collar economy. But you and I know that right here in New York City, in neighborhood after neighborhood, the green-collar economy is taking shape. It's being built by engaged citizens and community groups determined to lead, not follow. Through our Go Green initiative, I've seen firsthand that Manhattan's neighborhoods have become great engines for policy innovation, able to match the output from any government agency in the city. Last year, the brainstorms that bubbled up through our conference contributed to a report we issued called Food in the Public Interest. Many of the report's proposals are being championed by government officials. Who in this audience today will come up with the next great policy innovation, the next food shed proposal, a faster and cheaper distribution network? It's really up to you today. You know, this summit takes place at the end of a decade and at a moment when the sustainable food movement needs to shift gears. You have gotten politicians to pay attention. Now it's time to find out if we can get the results. If you have any question about the success of your grassroots advocacy in putting sustainable food on the political map, just ask Congressman Steve Israel from Long Island, who is working with us to secure funding to assess New York City's food shed. Or ask Senator Gillibrand, who's scouring federal agencies for grants. Or ask Kathleen Merrigan, the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture in Washington, who is trying to energize regional agriculture on a national scale, and hearing from food industry lobbyists who are getting very nervous as she makes progress. Now we enter a different phase of this game. It's not about please notice us. It's not about let's set up a commission. It's not about let's announce plans to announce plans. Now it's actually time to get results. To finally get results, we're going to roll up our sleeves and get to work. We're going to, at the end of this day, we're going to come up with the policies that will change New York City. It's not an outrageous goal. It's an honest objective. And for one reason, because the people in this audience have been hard at work for so many years when these issues were starved for attention. Standing on the foundation you built, today we have confidence to make this happen. Are you ready to go to work today? All right. Now, I just want to sound the call for one more reform that will elevate this entire effort. In New York City, we simply must create a Department of Food and Markets in city government. Now, at the state level, there has long been a Department of Agriculture and Markets, showing that in at least one area, which I actually find incredible. Albany is ahead of New York City. So we got to fix that right away, okay? Now, Mayor Bloomberg, who spoke at a conference we held last year, has launched many great programs. He's been a trailblazer in making New York City healthier and greener. But there's still too much at stake for this work to be done without an agency headed up by a commissioner reporting directly to this mayor. Now, few people know that our city once had a Department of Markets that got swept into Consumer Affairs way back in 1968. It's time to bring that back. The new Department of Food and Markets will have its hands full. It will make sure city agencies purchase as much healthy, locally grown food as possible, audit city land in order to increase urban agriculture, launch new businesses with enterprise zones and tax incentives, and help farmers markets become permanent by building the needed infrastructure. And as long as we're raising the bar for City Hall's profile on food, why don't we follow Michelle Obama's lead and put a garden in City Hall Park? Just as placing the Department of Ed next to City Hall demonstrated the importance of public schools, City Hall Garden will show our commitment to sustainable food, and people will see it around the world, because that's how this city rolls. What we do matters around the world. So I just want to say to NYU, to Just Foods, to all of you here today, we are policymakers, we are innovators, we are front and center in this debate. No more delay. Let's get specific proposals, turn them into legislative initiatives, shift the course of policy in this city and in this state, roll up our sleeves, let's get to work. Today is ours. Thank you very much.
It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce author, activist, and mother, Anna Lappé. Her most recent book, Her most recent book, Diet for a Hot Planet, The Climate Crisis at the End of Your Fork, gets at the very heart of why we have gathered here today. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you so much for being here today. Please welcome Anna Lappé.
Good morning, everyone. Ooh, I like being introduced as a mother. It's a new thing for me. It's very, very exciting. So it is also just so thrilling to be here. I don't know about you, but hearing Scott Stringer rally us that way this morning certainly energized me. And I also just feel the sense of the historic nature of this summit, that here we are in the largest city in the United States having a conversation timed with the conversation in Copenhagen, connecting food and climate in a way that truly this conversation has not been happening, and we are breaking ground here. So it's really thrilling to be here. We're going to start this morning in a really special way. We have two video messages to us, a sort of appropriately environmentally friendly way to have two women here who can speak to us so powerfully about this connection of food and climate while they are doing the important work that they're doing in Copenhagen. The first video comes to us from an incredible hero to many. And her video, along with the second video, are really going to help us connect the dots between all the different issues that we're working on and help us think in terms of systems. Think big, but also think about how we really get our hands dirty, how we really get down to the issues and really work solidly to make change. So our first